is not the kind of thing that we can afford to play with. This is essential to our country.
Well, just so everybody understands what's going to happen, these guys are either going to go to jail because they won't violate their religious beliefs, or the hospitals and the schools are going to close, which means government is going to get bigger because they're going to have to fill the void that is left when you guys quit doing it. And maybe that's what they wanted all along. I apologize.
I'm afraid you just lost a friend, Mr. Gowdy. Your time has expired.
My apologies to my friend from South Carolina.
As is appropriate, I now ask unanimous consent that the statement in this paper by Martin Luther King be placed in the record, in which he says, "There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe nor politic nor popular, because conscience tells one it is the right thing." With that, we go to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Conley, for 5 minutes.
Thank you. You know, I criticized the policy coming out of the Department of Health and Human Services because I thought that some of the critics, including critics in my own denomination, had a point. And I thought they had misstepped, and I urged the White House to correct the problem. I believe, like millions of Americans, that they did correct the problem. And I believe today's hearing is a sham. And I believe, I have to assume each of you gentlemen came here in good faith. But surely it has not escaped your attention that you are being used for a political agenda. Maybe you're willingly being used. I don't know. I don't know what's in your heart. Here you are being asked to testify about your rights being trampled on, an overstatement if there ever was one, while you're on a panel and your participation on the panel makes you complicit in, of course, the trampling of freedom, because we were denied, on this side of the aisle, any witness who might have a differing point of view.
Would the gentleman yield?
No, sir, I will not. And I think that's shameful. I think it actually contradicts exactly what you think you're here to testify about. And I think it taints the value of this panel that could have been a thoughtful discussion, but it's not. This is a panel designed, with your conscious participation or not, to try one more time to embarrass the President of the United States and his administration by overstating an issue which is sacred to all Americans, religious freedom. But of course, in order to do it, we have to, in an almost Stalinist-like fashion, have signs of democratic icons to rub democratic faces in it, as if those icons would be on the same side of this dispute today. But since they're all deceased, it would be hard to gainsay that. And so I say to you, as a member of this committee, who actually shared the concerns you say you have last week, that I think this is a shameful exercise. And I am very sad you have chosen to participate and be used the way you're being used, just as you were in the previous questioning, as if people are going to jail over this. Shame. Everybody knows that's not true. Catholic hospitals supported the compromise. They're not afraid of closing down hospitals in America. If we want to have a legitimate debate about, where's the right boundary, let's have it. But overstating it and making charges that are just outlandish and frankly beyond the pale serves no purpose other than political demagoguery in an election year. And men and women of the cloth, it seems to me, ought to run, not walk, away from that line. I now yield to my colleague from Connecticut, Ms. Rosa DeLore.
I thank my colleague for yielding to me. I think that one of the pieces of information that hasn't been discussed here today at all, quite frankly, is that, in fact, there is an exemption for the Catholic Church, other houses of worship, for the Catholic Church and the synagogues, for mosques. There is an exemption.
The gentleman will suspend. The gentleman cannot leave the room while yielding to another member. Would you please remain? The gentleman has yielded back his time. We now go to the gentleman from Texas,
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Farenthold.
Mr. Chairman, the gentleman is standing right there.
The gentleman has returned. Is the gentleman going to remain, please?
Yeah, he was standing right there.
Yeah,
Right
he did.
here, Mr. Chairman.
Let the lady, please let the lady talk.
gentlelady may
Please take
continue.
your hands off me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. I also just appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and I know I'm not a member of this committee. So I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak at this, in this forum. The fact of the matter is that the churches, synagogues, mosques, other houses of worship are exempt, as are their employees. Let us state the fact on that. And most recently, we've had a Supreme Court decision that upheld the opportunity for those houses of worship to be able to hire whomever they want, so that the church is exempt, their employees are exempt. Understand that what we're talking about here today, and I will speak about the Catholic Church as a provider and as an employer. And the fact of the matter is, as a provider, nothing changes. The conscience clause, all of that is intact. It is not inviolable. It is, you cannot dispense, prescribe, use a contraceptive service if that is so choosing. But in fact, the church is an employer. And as an employer, and now particularly under the accommodation that was made, that there has to be provided for people who work for that entity to be able to get insurance coverage that includes the recommendations of the Institute of Medicine, which is a medical independent research body that was asked to come up with what are the essential preventive services that women would need for health care. And amidst them, there is contraceptive coverage.
The gentleman's time has expired. We now go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Farenthold.
Talk about abridging freedom of speech.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I understand that this is an issue that everyone is incredibly passionate about. It's the First Amendment to the Constitution, the one that I think our founding fathers considered most important because they put it first. And I can understand why everybody is passionate and concerned about this issue. Quite frankly, I believe the Affordable Care and Patient Protection Act is unconstitutional to begin with. The Attorney General of my home state, Texas, along with numerous others, have filed suit in the Supreme Court, and I'm optimistic that the Supreme Court will hold the entire act to be unconstitutional. But add to this the mandate that the church provide and pay for services that they are opposed to brings it in contradiction to the First Amendment as well. And that's a double strike. Makes it, I guess, even more unconstitutional or doubly unconstitutional. But I did have a question for Mr. Lawyer. I wanted to follow up for something some members of the other side asked. I'm the product of Catholic middle school, Catholic high school, and Catholic law school. So I guess I've had 4, 5, 6, 9 years of Catholic education. And unless the nuns got it wrong, the Catholic Church does not have a problem with the use of contraceptives for medical purposes. So I would assume from that it wouldn't be morally objectionable to the church to pay for those for medical purposes. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to make sure I understand where the church stands.
That would be my understanding also.
And there are numerous organizations, both federally and private funding, that make available free or low-cost contraceptives throughout the country. I'm sure you're aware of that.
Yes, that's also my understanding.
So we've got a mandate here that really is a lot of much ado about nothing. If it were carefully crafted, the chances of somebody not being able to get the care, or for that matter, the optional contraceptives that they desire is, for all practical purposes, nil.
Those services are very, very widely available. And what we are talking about is a very narrow band. It is clearly a minority opinion or a minority view, but we think it's one that ought to be protected.
And so I think we're at a point where we're trampling on the Constitution for no real reason. I also had the opportunity this week to meet, I guess, with your friend Bishop Mulvey from Corpus Christi. He sends his regards, and what we kind of talked about is how this really is a moral issue. Religious freedoms, being told what to do, is an intrusion on these freedoms, and the issue is religious liberty. And maybe this is more of a rhetorical question than it is an actual question, but I will open it up to the panel. Today it's contraceptives. Where do we go next? I mean, what are we opening the door to when we start trampling on these liberties? And again, I'll call it a rhetorical question, but if any member of the panel would like to comment, I would welcome it.
Well, this was a question I asked before. Where does it end? I think that we're clearly hollowing out the idea of religious liberty by going in this direction, and it's one of just many a death of many cuts. And if you can keep on finding reasons to reduce it, people will. And so I think that there's a real danger here.
I think you'll find. Did you have something to add, Your Excellency?
No.
Yeah, it's at the level of principle. If the church can be dragooned into providing these objectionable services, then the door is open to other objectionable services down the road. So it's breaching a principle.
And I go back to a lot is accomplished in this government one step at a time or incrementally. We need to look no further than the fact that you can practically smoke nowhere. First, you had to be in a section of the restaurant. Then you couldn't be in any section of the restaurant. Then you couldn't be in your office building. Then you had to be outside. Then you had to be 25 feet from the door outside. And when you open the door to this, regardless of what you feel about cigarettes or not, it's illustrative of how the government operates, one step at a time. And I urge us to be very cautious as we start to take away what is one of our fundamental freedoms. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Langford.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. This is not something probably you anticipated a year ago to think, gosh, wouldn't it be great sometime in 2012 if I could go be on a congressional hearing and just get berated publicly. Wouldn't that be just so fun? So I thank you for being here. And for Dr. Mitchell from Southwestern, I'm a Southwestern graduate. Honored to be able to have you here. I did not know that you were attending as Southwestern leader as well, so honored that you are here as well. To be able to represent an institution that I also am an alumni of. I've been fascinated to be able to hear the testimony of what this hearing is about. I've heard this hearing is about trying to prevent women from getting contraceptives and women's health. That is not what this hearing is about. That's a twisting off to try to say that this is about some barbaric group trying to limit access